Well, hello, group fitness junkies. I'm so excited about today's guest. Oh my gosh, we have Siri Chilazi with us, and we are going to be talking about how to blaze a trail in our industry. And before I turn things over to her a little bit, I wanted to give you a formal sort of bio so you get the lay of the land. So, Siri Chilazi is the IDEA Emerging Trailblazer of the Year 2023 and a 17-year veteran in the fitness industry. She's a master trainer for cardio yoga and rack the bar. She teaches formats ranging from Pilates to bar to step to HIIT, really to anything. I've seen her exercising with coconuts before. As an educator, Siri is passionate about training instructors and regularly presents at industry-leading conferences including IDEA World, SCW MANIA, and FitnessFest. Siri holds certifications with ACE, AFAA, and SCW as well as more than 20 specialties certificates. Besides her fitness career, Siri has a second career as an academic researcher on behavioral science and workplace gender equality at Harvard University. She is the author with, don't let me mispronounce her name, Iris, is it French? Is it Bohnet?
Oh, close. Swiss, so it's pronounced Iris Bohnet.
Iris Bohnet.
Mm-hmm.
Of a forthcoming book on data-driven solutions to level the playing field at work, to be published by HarperCollins in early 2025. I didn't know this about you. You were writing a book and it was published in like a year.
Yes, it's very exciting.
So exciting. Okay, so before I turn it over, I wanted to say to this amazing audience that Siri is just the total package human being. She is so absolutely stunningly beautiful
Oh,
and so brilliant, so talented, so smart, and hardworking. And she's just everything. And I also wanted to say that as someone not newer to the industry, but newer to the conference circuit, which is, I'm trying to remember where we met. Where was it an SCW?
that's such a great question. I feel like it was a mania maybe shortly after COVID. Yeah, once things started coming back a couple of years ago.
Yeah. So my experience presenting my own format at a conference is all pandemic and post-pandemic because Warrior didn't exist pre-pandemic. I was conferencing as a Beachbody presenter. So when I entered the scene as a presenter for my own programs, I had some trepidation about the whole thing, some nerves. And I didn't know, there's a lot of big ego in our industry and a lot of talent. And I didn't know how I would fit into that. And I didn't know if it would feel competitive. And I just want to say to the audience and to you, Siri, I want to say this to you that you were so lovely to me. You were so
Thank you.
abundant, mindset, cheering me on, rooting for my success, attending my sessions, and you're the goal of who we want to be and who I want to be in terms of having that abundant mindset. And we want everyone to win. And Siri represents other brands, and I can't wait to talk about those today because there's room for all and we can all win. So with that, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, Ellen, thank you so much for that incredibly generous introduction. That's truly so sweet. And I just want to say all of that back to you. You've taken the conference circuit by an absolute storm. And that's been so wonderful to see. So I'm just thrilled to be connected and so honored to be here. So thanks for having me. Oh my gosh, what can I even add? I just love fitness. I think that's the biggest thing. And most of us, especially those of us who are in the industry still now after the pandemic weeded out a lot of people who didn't have that burning fire that says, no, I have to be doing this because this is my life's calling. So those of us who are still here and all of you who are listening, thank you for being still here. This industry is coming back stronger than ever. And with our perseverance and with our dedication, we will make sure that it's even better going forward. So I'm just thrilled to be playing a small part of it.
No, you're exactly right. The pandemic was a big filter, and yeah, we couldn't live without it. So we prevailed, and you're right, it's coming back stronger than ever. Well, you're calling in from Boston. You're tuning in from
Yes.
So we're on different sides of the continent. And yeah, all right. So how did you initially get into group fitness?
So I need to take you back to the very beginning, which is actually a 3-year-old little Siri discovering her mom's collection of Jane Fonda workout tapes and getting totally sucked in. So that's where my passion for movement and for exercise and group exercise, which of course I didn't really realize at the time, this is in the 80s, started. And the tragedy of my little young life was that I could never go with my mom to all the group exercise classes she was taking, because she was taking them at facilities that wouldn't let in people under 18. So I was begging my mom, can I come? She's like, no, I'm sorry. They won't let you into the gym or to the studio. But I did start dancing when I was 3. And so jazz, ballet first, and then transitioned into jazz and modern dance. And when I came to college, my very first semester, I finally was able to start taking group fitness classes, 4 or 5 days a week. There I am in the front row, just living the dream, loving every second. And our group fitness director, Don Stennis at Harvard University, was actually the one who, after a couple months, came up to me and said, Siri, you're clearly taking all these classes, you're loving it, you're in the front row. Have you ever considered becoming an instructor? And for me, the story is so powerful because it's one of those moments where the moment Don said it, it made so much sense. Like, oh my gosh, yes, of course, I should be a fitness instructor. But I had never considered it. It was never even a possibility that had crossed my mind. So it took someone else, seeing my potential and extending a hand and saying, hey, I think you could do something that you don't even realize you could do. Let me give you some pointers. Let me help you along on this journey. And I've just been so inspired by that ever since then, I've kind of tried to pass that on as much as possible and bring other people into the industry too. And that was, like you said earlier, 17 years ago.
Goosebumps. Really, truly gave me goosebumps. Your story is really different than mine.
Really?
Yes, really different. Did you start off in the front row? You just marched into the class?
I did.
Shut up. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I think that's a little unusual. I think most people are maybe a little bit more like me, where we kind of start by hiding in the back row. Well, anyway, I was definitely hiding in the back row. I'll elaborate on this at some other episode.
I want to hear the whole story.
Oh, well, I talk about it sometimes on stage at conferences, but I was recovering. No, I wasn't. I was not yet recovering. I was fully immersed in an eating disorder. I was, and I was hiding from myself, from the world. And I was struggling with bulimia and exercise bulimia and compulsive overeating. And I was addicted to laxatives, and I was trying to recover. And group fitness actually ended up being a huge part. I was actually the final piece of the puzzle that shifted my mental health and my physical health and spiritual health and all that into balance. Group fitness was. But we're not here to talk about me, so I won't go into that story today. But I was hiding in the back row. And then as I started to become healthier and more confident, I started to sort of slowly work my way into the front. And it was born in me. So it was interesting that it didn't even occur to you. I was thinking, this has changed my life so profoundly. This has put a smile actually back on my face. These people, this room, this experience. I want to do this for others. If I can help one person, a scintilla of what this has done for my life, this is my calling. So, and then I was like, so how do I do it? Who do I talk to? What do I do? So it's so interesting that here you are, just bebop right into the front row, cutest button, probably wearing your pearl earrings. And then the guy, Don, or who, the director.
Yeah. I love your story though, because these two together show that there's so many different paths, not just to get into the industry, but as you were saying earlier, just so many ways to make a difference in people's lives and to be successful and have a long and meaningful career. I think that I hope people take that away, right? Is that for most things in life, there's not just one blueprint or one way or one path. There's infinitely many different ways to make it your own. And that's sometimes when younger people, either, in the fitness realm or in my other work in academia, ask for advice. I'm like, I don't know what I can do. You're different than me. Every person is unique. So I can share certainly my own journey and what's worked for me. You can use that as inspiration, but don't take it as a blueprint to follow. Take nuggets and make it your own, right? Because each of us has a unique path to travel down.
So good. Yeah. Speaking of unique paths, so I do want to talk about this Emerging Trailblazer of the Year award. I have so many questions.
Oh,
First of all, I believe all of our listeners are very familiar with IDEA. It is kind of, I mean, the hub. It's the Mecca. It was the first conference I ever heard of, and I
yes.
expected to attend. And they have these very prestigious awards for Personal Trainer of the Year, for Group Fitness Instructor of the Year award, and they have the Emerging Trailblazer of the Year award, which Siri just won. And I wanted to hear, like, what was that like, and just start there. What was it?
Oh,
So you knew you were nominated, and so
this is one of those things where once you get in the middle of it, you realize there's so much more behind the scenes that you never knew about, once you're on the outside. So you do have to get nominated, I believe, by multiple people, in fact. And then they let you know and they ask you to submit an application. That's actually really extensive. I think I worked on it for several full days straight, which is a wonderful opportunity to reflect on your career. What are your proudest accomplishments? Where do you feel like you've made the biggest difference? What are the key factors that you think have enabled you to be successful in this industry? I love those questions because they're questions that you don't think of in the daily grind when you're just preparing classes, teaching classes, putting together playlists, preparing a conference presentation. And I felt so incredibly honored to be nominated among, my peers, Ruben Pereira and Colleen Fries, that were my fellow finalists for that award, and then to receive it. And I think what was most meaningful for me in particular is that IDEA as an organization is one that I so respect. Like you said, they are kind of the organization in fitness, have been for decades. And the people, the juries who determine these awards, I don't even know who they are, but what I do know is they're the leading experts and most preeminent voices in our industry. And I feel like we live in a time where so much of, driven by social media, driven by just the culture that we're in right now, is based on appearances and number of followers and sort of vanity metrics like this that don't always reflect people's commitment and longevity and true knowledge base and certifications and expertise. And maybe I'm a little old school, but those are my values. I really believe in education, continuing education, certifications, knowing what you're talking about, always learning, being in a humble student mindset instead of like, rah, 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 here's how many followers I have. And so to get that recognition from peers and people and an organization that I respect so much was so incredibly meaningful.
yeah, I can imagine, like, just a all-time career highlight. Like, I'm so proud of you. I am
Thank you,
so,
Ellen.
I was overjoyed to hear the news and watch your acceptance speech, and all of that was just
I can't wait to watch yours for an award soon.
I truthfully have been nominated for not Trailblazer, but I was nominated last year for Fitness Leader of the Year, and I believe
Congratulations.
before that Instructor of the Year. So maybe one of these days. Okay,
No doubt.
so our audience of listeners, there's talented instructors out there listening, and so in terms of blazing a trail, I love that language. I love the language of trailblazing. I think of myself too. I identify as like someone who is like trying to blaze a trail and do things differently and make noise and make a difference and make an impact. And I love that language. I love the name of your award. And so I think what I really want the heart of our episode together to be about is not how to win an award, how to win that awarded idea, not that,
Mhm.
but how to take this concept of blazing your trail, whatever that means in your life, to those of you beautiful souls who are listening, those of you who are educated, you are talented. I know who this audience is. You do care about your education. So what are some of the like key things that you're passionate about, Siri, that that you think would serve as great reminders, or maybe they're hearing it for the first time about how they can blaze a trail in their own community and in their own fitness, realm.
I love that you ask it like that, Ellen. What are you passionate about? Because I've never walked around thinking, oh, I'm blazing a trail over here, right? I'm just doing things that bring me joy. I'm trying to bring other people joy day in and day out. And then these moments come in life where you sort of have an opportunity to pause, look back, take stock, and say, oh, wow, here's everything that I've done in the last 10 years, or here's kind of this big thing that we were able to accomplish. And I'm sure it's the same for you too with building a brand and Warrior, right? You're not, there being like, oh, I'm just going to take over the world by storm and build this global community. You're just trying to do your best day in and day out. And then at some point you look back and say, oh my gosh, we've trained so many different instructors. I've presented here and there and everywhere. And wow, look at how this thing has grown. So I guess that's the first piece for me is I never really have had a master plan or even look too far into the future to say, oh, in 3 years' time, I want to have accomplished X, and 10 years from now, I want to be doing Y. I've just kind of taken step by step, doing things that bring me joy. My very first format that I got certified in was step aerobics 17 years ago. I still teach it weekly, at least. I still love it. My life goal, in fact, is to be teaching step when I'm 75 years old still. So that informs everything I do from a longevity and injury prevention perspective. It's not just for today, it's for 40 years from now. And then I was always taking other instructors' classes. And that exposed me to new formats. And I said, ooh, I want to get certified in Zumba. Ooh, I want to get certified in Barre. Ooh, I want to get certified in cardio yoga. And just as one example, then I got certified in cardio yoga. I got really deep into it. This is at the very beginning of the pandemic in the spring of 2020. And I just knew that I fell in love with the format. I was excited to teach it, but I didn't have any greater plans. And then when I submitted in my certification video and had a feedback meeting with Stacey Lee Krause, the brilliant creator of cardio yoga, I had poured my heart and soul into the video, and I guess it showed. And she said, I'm so impressed with what you just did. I'd love for you to become a part of the team and become a master trainer and an ambassador for this program. That didn't happen because it was something that I was aiming towards, or that I, wanted to.
Being in the front row of your class and not thinking of it's just the same thing. Like you getting on it and then it's deja vu.
That means a lot, but it's like when you put yourself out there and pour your heart and soul into everything that you're doing and are always trying to educate yourself and be better, then I guess I can just speak to my experience, but doors open and opportunities will cross your radar, stuff beyond your wildest dreams. And then it's just your job to keep eyes and ears open and sort of grab those opportunities with both hands when they come to you.
I couldn't agree more. I have the same experience in my life. And you never know who you meet. You never know what connection is going to lead to your next wildest dream coming true, your next level, your next format, your next experience. You never know. And I love that you were just putting your heart and soul into that video, and it led into something, a whole entire role in your life, master training for cardio yoga. And I know you take other people's classes because, like I said, when I introduced you, I mean, you didn't just meet me, you came and took my session. And I believe if I remember correctly, you've taken my sessions more than once. I think I've seen you.
Yeah.
You've taken my sessions a couple times. So yes, we can learn so much by taking from others. There's something we can learn from everyone, even someone with less experience. We can learn so much. We can come in with that mindset and take away something absolutely new.
Always. Actually, speaking of learning from someone who's younger than you, one of the things I've had the joy of doing for the last probably decade or so is mentoring new instructors that are going through the ACE primary certification training. I teach a lot of my in-person classes at Harvard University, and we offer a program there to anybody who has membership at our gym to basically go through the ACE course over the course of a semester, meet for 2 hours every week, get paired with a mentor one-on-one, and then, after several months, they take their ACE exam, and then we hopefully hire as many of them as possible to teach at our facilities. And that's been one of the most amazing experiences in terms of making me a better instructor, is working with the folks who are starting from ground zero, and thinking about, right from their watching them, giving them advice, noticing what they're already doing well, where they need to improve, putting myself back in the shoes of a newbie and thinking, like, right, I have 17 years of experience now, but when I only had 7 months, where was I at? What was I struggling with? How did I get better at certain things? So to your point, we can learn from the biggest superstars and we can learn from the freshest newbies, and it's equally valuable learning.
And a big plug for ACE. I absolutely love, if for those of you listening that maybe don't have a primary certification yet, I just strongly encourage that, because the landscape changed back when I started, and probably back when you started, which was roughly, I think I've been teaching a little bit longer than you, Siri, but it was a prerequisite. It was required. We had to, couldn't get a job unless you had your primary group fitness certification. And so then years later, and this is cool, it's just different, all these specialty certifications started coming up, like group power or Balaton or cardio yoga or Pio or you name it, Zumba or Warrior Rhythm, where you could go take a training and learn all the skills you need to in that day to safely and effectively practice and teach that format, but it didn't give you the ability to create your own stuff or go veer outside of presenting that trademarks materials. So that's great that we have all these packaged ready to go formats. That's great. However, a lot of studios now no longer necessarily require the overarching primary group fitness certification. And I really encourage our community to always make sure they put that in their back pocket. It changes the way you room. It does require you, it holds you accountable to get continuing education because you have to maintain those credentials. So I just love that about it. And I'm a big fan of ACE.
I could not co-sign more everything that you just said. And I want people to remember that the reason a lot of those format-specific trainings like Warrior, Zumba, Cardio Yoga, Rock the Bar, which is my other format that I'm a master trainer for that combines bar fitness with belly dance technique, the reason those trainings are day long is because they assume that you already have the underlying primary group X certification that has taken months to train for, right? No one thinks, oh my gosh, you can come in for 8 hours and do this thing. That's one of the reasons I've been going to conferences since I think I started teaching in 2006-07, and my first conference was 2009, and I've gone to a fitness conference at least once a year ever since then, and these days more like 6-7 conferences a year. It's because whenever I go to sessions, I realize how little I know, and it keeps me humble and it keeps me hungry for more. So I can imagine the person who takes the 1 8-hour day of training and then they start teaching, they're like, I've got this, right? And unless they get exposure that shows them the limits of their knowledge, they might not have the drive to keep educating themselves. But the more you start listening to podcasts, going to conferences, going to other people's classes, exposing yourself to more that's going on in this industry, you realize that there is so much more to always know and be learning. And I think that's actually a very healthy mentality and a very healthy mindset to be in, is never to rest on our laurels, but always think about what's the latest and greatest, what's new, how is the science changing, how do I need to update my QA? My gosh, in 17 years, I have all my class plans saved. I have these monster Word documents that are 150 pages, 200 pages. And when I scroll back to some of those class plans that I created, let's say in 2008, I cringe, right? I cringe at the sequencing, the programming of it, the exercises that I chose. But I think that's good because we should evolve in 15 years and with modern understanding and new learning and just how we know what we know about the human body. Think about some of these new topics like fascia, connective tissue, and the interplay within mental health and physical health. And the focus that's shifting from fitness for aesthetics to fitness for wellness and feeling good and feeling centered and balanced. This wasn't around 10 years ago. thank goodness it's around now. But then that makes me think, what's going to be here 10 years from now that's not even on our radar yet? So always got to keep learning.
Always. And I love that you mentioned the word humility, because we can't grow without a humble heart. If the second we think we know it all, which is really tempting, and it's easy to fall into that. But if we can just stay grounded in humility, then we always know that there's room to learn and grow. And yes, the industry evolves, and exercises that are now okay, maybe were once contraindicated, and vice versa. And then
And vice versa, yeah.
seems like I love the whole change in the working out for aesthetics versus working out for health. And then there's like a whole movement in mobility. And then last year we learned there was a big emphasis on mindfulness. And before the pandemic, we started talking more about recovery and making.
Yes.
And so if you're just not like, if you don't go to conferences and you don't have a primary, it's easy to just kind of get stuck in a rut and not even know that you're stuck in a rut.
Exactly. Exactly. You don't know what you don't know, as the wise people say.
So aside from certification, learning from others, taking classes, what are some other things that are kind of, you're passionate about that have, helped guide your career?
Well, the other thing I would say is whatever you're doing, you have to make it your own. I go back to some of these young instructors that I mentor, and they'll be like, "Oh, Siri, but I'm not as musical as you, or I just can't do X, Y, and Z the way you do." And I said, "Oh my gosh, no, 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 no. You're not meant to do it like me, right? You're meant to do it like you." I'm fortunate to teach at facilities that have, I have dozens, of colleagues at all of the facilities where I teach, and we run big schedules with nearly 100 classes a week and so many different formats. And with many of us teaching the same format, we might have 10 different Zumba instructors, 15 people who teach some variation of total body conditioning or total body strength. And one of the beauties of that is that when we all put our spin on that, we are able to satisfy more members, because no one person can be everything to everyone. And I think this is something that we as instructors too have to remind ourselves to accept, is if someone walks out of your class or takes one class and never comes back, or makes weird faces in your class and then you never see them again, that's okay. Right? Your job is not to be the perfect fit for every single person out there. Just like when you go take other people's classes, you don't love every single one. You learn something in every single one. You can take away something that will make you a better instructor, but you might go, "Yep, respectfully, thank you for that 1 hour. That was a great experience, but I'm not going to do that format. I'm not going to train with this instructor again." So I think it's playing to your unique strengths and knowing who you are and what makes you shine, what makes you special, and then really leaning into that and not trying to compare yourself to others and saying, "Oh, I wish I could present, but I can't be like Trisha Murphy Madden or like Mindy Milray or like Lauren George or like Ellen." That's great. They already exist, right? So be you, learn from them, take nuggets from them, but don't let them intimidate you, I think. That's kind of the message here.
Absolutely. I feel like I love mentoring and training up new instructors. I'm so passionate about it. I love giving feedback. I love that whole process. And I do think new instructors tend to want to emulate or be like the person that inspired them. And, that is a good maybe starting off place. And, we do assimilate and kind of pick up mannerisms and things from people that we're drawn to and attracted to and or impressed by or whatever. And I think, that's a nice, like some of my new instructors have actually said they'll use some of my exact wording they hear on the video when they're teaching their class. I think that's a nice like starting off place.
Yeah.
But then they can learn and cultivate and find their own unique thumbprint of a personality of an instructor that is uniquely theirs. And you're right, we cannot be all things to all people. People don't, I am not everyone's cup of tea. But the more and it's really been in these last few years, Siri, that I feel like I'm really kind of settling into who I am and you know, my style and my mannerisms and my sense of humor or lack thereof. And it, yeah, the more I'm me, the more I'm gonna really powerfully draw the people that like me, and the more
Yeah.
I'm maybe not gonna be for somebody else, and that is okay. It's actually really beautiful. I think a good analogy is Hershey's Kisses. There's like all different kinds, and they're all quality. They're all
Yeah.
like quality Hershey Kisses, and you know, and some have nuts, some have white chocolate, some have caramel in the middle, some have just dark chocolate, some are just milk chocolate, some are, there's different versions, and some have a purple wrapper, and some are like, I don't know, one of them says like hugs on the lap. They're all a little different, and you might be drawn to one that I'm not drawn to because I'm always going to do dark chocolate. I don't know, I'm always going to do.
Exactly. But Ellen, to your point about the kisses, what you have done, and I think this is so beautiful, is you've built a team of diverse individuals around you with different strengths. So you know who you are, you know where Ellen shines, and now you haven't cloned Ellen 20 times in your team, but you've brought in people who can shine on different dimensions and appeal to different kinds of people. And I would urge any one of you who's in a position to build a team, if you're or maybe a group fitness manager and you're hiring instructors onto your team, right? Or you're even just pulling together an event where you're going to have 4 different instructors teaching. Don't have 4 instructors that are clones of each other. Get different people with different formats, different strengths, different styles, because every person who walks into your class or into your facility or into your conference is also going to be looking for different things. And there's no one thing that's going to satisfy all of them.
I love that. What else? What else are some of your trailblazing tactics?
One thing that I've become really passionate about recently, these passions evolve, and I think that's also good. People ask me all the time, what's your favorite format? Because I teach more than 20. And I say, the fact that I teach more than 20 and I can't rotate them. Other than Step, there's not a single other format that I've taught continuously for, 10 years or anywhere close to that, right? I'll teach Zumba on the regular schedule for a couple of years, and then I'll put something else, then I'll do Pilates, and then I'll do whatever, right? The fact that both to save our own bodies and to keep our minds fresh. Most importantly, it's that kind of keeping things fresh and changing things up is important. But so passions change and evolve, and one of the things that I've been really focused on in my own practice for the last several years is recovery. This is kind of how things always start with me usually, is I start with myself. I become interested in something. I start practicing it myself. I do one-on-one work with experts. I go take sessions at conferences. I read up everything that I can. And I upskill myself, and I get, if there's certifications and trainings available, I take all of those. And then once I feel like I'm starting to really know what I talk about, then that content might find its way into my classes, or it might become a workshop that I present at a conference. Only once I feel like I really understand what's happening. So I'm actually going to be presenting a session on, or sessions on, injury prevention for fitness professionals at the SCW MANIA conference is coming up in 2024. Not so much from a technical lens of how do you do a squat so as not to injure your knees, but how do you think holistically about the physical, mental, and emotional side, and how do you as an instructor prepare yourself for longevity in this industry? Because I told you already, I'm planning on being around 40 years from now when I'm 75 and still teaching step aerobics. So how do I make sure that I get there? So injury prevention, recovery, it's foam rolling, it's stretching, it's mobility work, it's corrective exercise. All of us have imbalances in our bodies. Some of them might be genetic. Most of them are functional. They've arisen over years and years as a result of the activities that we do in exercise, but also in our daily lives. So how do we manage those actively before we get injured, before we have to get surgery, before we have such debilitating knee pain that we have to be out from teaching for 4 weeks? I feel very lucky that I haven't had any of those major injuries yet, But I have to admit, since I turned 30, I started having like just little weird things. I wake up and all of a sudden my knee hurts. I'm like, what? Why? This never happened. Wake up and my hip is sore. I'm like, what? So nipping those things in the bud and learning how to really preemptively prehab things, right? The only difference between prehab and rehab, as people say, is that for rehab, there's been an injury before. So a lot of the exercises, the approaches that we deploy to prevent injury are actually exactly the same as we would deploy to treat an injury. So if we can, prevent that injury from happening in the first place, why wouldn't we do that instead? So our goal is to do prehab instead of rehab.
Right. And I hadn't really thought about that in terms of it being the same exercises.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
If you have a physical therapist that you work with, a chiropractor, any kind of active exercise specialist, ask them. And they will tell you, oh yeah, sure. If you're recovering from Achilles tendonitis, these are the exercises that we would do. These are the things that I'd prescribe for you. Now you're trying to prevent ever getting Achilles tendonitis. You're going to be doing the same stuff.
Talk to us about having a mentor.
Oh my gosh. I think one of the most important factors for success, especially in the fitness industry, but frankly, I think in any industry. My first mentor, like I said, was Dawn, the group fitness director, who's still my boss, who's still the group fitness director at Harvard, who plucked me out of her class, front row 17 years ago. What makes her a mentor? In the beginning, she wasn't trying to be my mentor. She was just being herself. She was just authentically passing on her wisdom. Like, I'll give you an example. One of the things that never has left my mind, is so etched into my mind, was I actually did my first primary group X certification with her. And she said, being an instructor is not about you. It's about your participants. This is not about how good you look, how fabulously fit you are, showing off what your body can do or whatever. This is about you channeling all your energy toward your participants, meeting them where they are at, observing them, seeing what they can do today, what exercises are right to give them today, doing things that are going to be safe, effective, and fun. And by the way, in that order, because I'm old school, safe first, then effective, and then if we can make it fun on top of that, great. That are going to be for them. And the other thing that she taught me, which I think especially in today's landscape is so profound, is she said, in this job, you don't get to have a bad day, right? Because you could be the best part of somebody's week. Like, someone could be in a really tough life circumstance, going through whatever, and once a week, they manage to carve out the time to come to your class. You need to be at 110% for that person, which means for every person, every single time you teach. And I actually really love that, because I think that advice and that mentality of approaching our job with that level of professionalism, also enables us to have balance and say, I'm going to deal with, we all have stuff going on, whatever, but I'm going to deal with that over here. And then when I get up on stage and walk into my studio, that's my sacred time to just shine for my students, right? And like light them up. So it's nuggets like that I've picked up along the way from Dawn and all of the other people that I consider mentors. Some of them I kind of see and talk to one-on-one. Some of them are mentors to me without realizing. I've just followed them for a decade. I've been to so many of their certification trainings, conference sessions. When they are a guest on somebody's podcast, I listen, I watch their postings on social.
That's like free mentorship, is like, yeah, a podcast or like going to someone's sessions. Yes, it's true. It doesn't have to be like an official, like a dating relationship. Like, will you be my official mentor? Like, it can
exactly.
And they come and they go, and there's different influences. And I just think they do change the way. So when you were talking, I was reminded of some premarital counseling that and it was just like solid wisdom that actually I didn't think I needed premarital counseling or anything like that, but it was like, I remember how it impacted me the most, and not just my marriages. I'm on my second husband, not just how it affected that, but all relationships in terms of like conflict resolution. I learned some tools how to have a constructive argument. This is just going to be an analogy here. So like there were some guidelines like do not interrupt, try not to use hyperbole like always and you never, and like not to
Yeah.
be hyperbolic, and to just certain like wisdom, and there were like 10 rules to having not to bring up another issue and throw it on the table,
Mm,
like these 10 rules. And it really, really has changed the way I have conflict with people, and that turns it into something constructive because I've learned these tools that I just was taught. And the same thing with like having a mentor or multiple mentors or learning from podcasts or conferences. You pick up these things like Siri just saying, like, it wasn't about her being the star of the show, how fit she is, how smart she is, but what she could give and impart and empower and provide for her students. Just like that little tidbit, take that, file it away, take another one, file it away. And, little by little, like it shapes who we are. So
yeah.
um, and then paying it forward so that you have like your hand up, you're looking for mentorship. Doesn't have to be a formal like agreement that you're my mentor, but you're looking for influences, good influences, people you admire, people you respect, but you're also having a hand down. And, like Siri works with these young, folks at the college that are going through the ACE program and starting to teach for the first time. So she's imparting, so she's, doing it that way too. And actually like that helps us learn too. When we're educating, it's one of the best ways we learn, cement things in our own.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
And
It's so true.
something you said earlier about taking like other people's classes and stuff, and doing certifications that you had mentioned that maybe you're not even interested, like maybe you're not necessarily interested in, but they work for your schedule. They're coming to your city or whatever. It's convenient. So you taking something that maybe you didn't know you were interested in, and maybe you'll fall in love with it like Siri did with cardio yoga. She didn't know she was going to fall in love with it and then be a presenter for it. But maybe it's something you don't end up doing, but you still can take pieces. Like there's things that I learned in yoga that I apply when I'm teaching cycle. Who would
100%.
have thought? But there's so much crossover.
Yeah. It's funny, I was just working with a dear friend of mine who's a colleague with much more experience in the industry, a Pilates instructor, has become a mobility specialist. So she was actually training me. We were doing like a one-on-one session. And I specifically told her the reason I wanted to work with her is, one, because she's so experienced and highly credentialed, but because I know all the different disciplines that she's had training in, and they're very different, right? And I said, I kind of put my own physical care in the hands of those folks because I trust them the most, because they can see the big picture, right? If you only do one thing, if you're only a physical therapist, that's amazing. You have all the tools of physical therapy at your disposal, but you don't have acupuncture. You don't have joint mobility. You don't have, if not on top of that, a massage therapist. You don't necessarily have the tools of manual manipulation. And we know that all of those tools can be helpful. So I gravitate towards practitioners and people who have just an understanding of these multiple adjacent and complementary disciplines and can draw on the combination of all of them when they're assessing me and saying, hey, Siri, how can we make you move even better? How can we make sure that you don't get injured in the future? And I try to do that same thing in group exercises. Yes, to your point, I'm certified in everything from yoga to HIIT to cycling, which I've actually never taught, but I'm still certified in sprint cycling, and Pilates and Barre and belt and step and this and that and the other. And they all reinforce each other. And I take learnings and insights from each discipline when I'm teaching something totally different.
Since we were talking about like mentorship and how kind of along with having a mentor in your life that's giving you wisdom and insight, do you have any words or any thoughts or anything you want to say to our audience about like how to receive feedback? Like what if it's feedback? What if it's feedback that is something that you need to improve on and it's hard to hear?
Yeah. So I know this podcast is titled Confessions. So can I make a confession now? Is that okay?
Is this gonna be the? Is this the?
This is the confession for me today.
It is time.
My confession is that some of the most profound feedback that has been most transformative for my career as an instructor has come from my students, and it's been constructive and difficult feedback. Perhaps that's why it's been the most transformative. So I'll just give you a few examples. I was doing a strength training class, and I had people hold a small Pilates ball, like a bender ball, between their elbows to do something. And after the class, this woman who'd been taking my classes for so long, who's so sweet, she came up in such a nice way, but she was like, Siri, I don't know if you noticed, but people with my body type, we can't get into that position. She was a little bit bigger up top. And so, the ball is a fixed size, it's pretty small. She was like, I just can't bring my elbows that close to even hold the ball. And I was mortified because without aiming to, I had, made her feel uncomfortable and created an environment where she couldn't feel successful. It's the worst, right? That's the last thing we want to do as instructors.
Literally the opposite of everything you aspire to do, and you did it.
Exactly. And I'll share another example. Again, changed my cueing forever. I had heard someone say, and then I had adopted that cue to brace your core. Imagine someone's about to punch you in the stomach, right? And if you imagine that that's going to happen, you kind of automatically brace and engage your core muscles. And again, it took a student walking up to me very tentatively after class. She was like, Siri, I just want you to know that when you say something like that about, punching in the stomach, there could be people in your class who are victims of violence or who have a history of violence in the family. And that's just very triggering. I wanted to die. I wanted to cry, right? Again, just mortifying. But I sucked up and said, thank you so much for telling me. I really appreciate it. You will never hear me say that again. And then I had to go home and sit with it for a while, right? But it's made me such a better instructor. And so that's my confession. It's actually the biggest lessons and the greatest growth has often come from receiving the most difficult feedback and often from participants. But it doesn't always have to be even difficult feedback. I mean, I've made it a habit at the end of each of my classes when we're cooling down and stretching to tell people if there's any announcements, whatever, I give the announcements and I say, I would really love to hear your feedback. If you have a favorite song that you'd like to hear on next week's playlist, or for a strength-based class, if you have a favorite prop that you'd like to use, maybe you love working with resistance bands, let me know. I'll put that on the schedule for next week. Or any feedback about any exercise or anything that I said, please come talk to me. And you'll need to say that spiel consistently for weeks or months before the first person walks up to you to say anything. And then you'll need to reinforce it. So now, if someone gave me a playlist suggestion, when that song is on the playlist next week, I'll say, thank you, Janet, for this awesome suggestion. Janet requested this song last week, so here it goes. And once you show people that you're taking their feedback on and it's changing how you do things, that's when they become more emboldened to come give you more of that feedback. So it's a virtual cycle and it takes a little bit of work to get the cycle spinning. But once it does, it's so rewarding and it builds so much loyalty and goodwill with your people. They will just love you that much more and they will be that much more motivated to come to your class because they see how much you care about them and listen to them.
Oh, that is so beautiful. I love that so much. That's a beautiful note to end on. So, to all the trailblazers out there listening, we're all blazing our trails. We're all blazing our trails in this beautiful industry that we get to be part of, that we're so privileged to be part of. I'm so grateful, Siri, that you shared some of your time and energy with us and gave us some great reminders and some news tidbits too. And I'm so proud of your award.
Oh, thank you, Ellen.
For your book to be released. I'll have to read it, and then we'll have to have you come back on and talk about it.
I would love to.
25. So I will actually see quite a bit of you in the next year. So I just want to invite all of our listeners, many of whom do go to conferences. So Siri is going to be at DC Mania with us.
Yes.
Shortly, and it will be shortly after the airing of this podcast. So when you're there, make sure you come to her sessions, visit her there. then she will also be in California Mania, San Francisco. We will also be there. So that's another place you can connect with her, meet her, take her sessions. She's doing IDEA, of course, and fitness. And IDEA is in Los Angeles again. We'll see you there too.
Yes, July 2024.
The place I won't see you is Arizona. We're not doing FitnessFest this year, but she'll be in FitnessFest. You guys can meet her there. You all can meet her there. And then also please follow her on social media. It's Siri Chilazi. So it's Siri. I was worried about saying it on the podcast
You
because
nailed it.
no, not like I'm gonna say your name wrong, but I was worried that my computer was gonna be like,
Oh.
so worried because I was talking about you. I was talking about doing this podcast. I forgot to tell you this funny story. I was talking about you to my husband, and my computer was like, like,
Very timed up.
does that during the interview?
It's happened a lot to me.
Siri, yes, I knew how to spell it. I just wasn't sure I could say it right now. Chilazi, Chilazi, and you can find her by her name on Instagram, on LinkedIn. She's doing all kinds of. Her Instagram is so fun and adorable, and she's showing us how we can do millions of planks in all kinds of ways you could never even imagine you could possibly do a plank. So please follow her. And then also, she is a presenter for cardio yoga, and she has a discount code Siri50 at cardioyoga.com, and at Rack the Bar, it's rackthebar.com, and she has a discount code of Siri20, and we will put those links and codes in the show notes for today's episode. So thank you so much, Siri, for coming on, and thank you to our beautiful, amazing, talented, trailblazing listeners for tuning in to yet another episode of Confessions of a Group X Instructor. Bye.
Thank you so much for having me, Ellen, and thank you all for listening. It's been such a joy.
Thank you.